Hey guys, welcome to our next episode. I'm here with Cynthia from Whole Lotta Rosie.
Hey.
Welcome. Look, I'm pretty new to the Pockets team, but from what I've heard, Whole Lotta Rosie kills, and that's why you guys are back. Great job so far. You seem to have impressed the entire team. I will definitely be at your next show. Awesome reputation. Can't wait to see it live. There's 1,000,000,001 questions, but what I want to do is start from the beginning. How'd you get your start in music? What do you do, and why? Big question.
Yeah, big question. So I was a musical theatre kid when I was younger. Just loved performing, really. Could always sing, just naturally, and loved doing that on stage. And when I was young, I thought musical theatre was going to be the avenue that I took. And then I just found, as I was getting into my late teens, I was having this crisis of confidence. The idea of auditioning for productions and getting knocked back, that's just part of what you're going to face if you do that kind of thing. And I just knew I wasn't equipped to handle that at that age. So I kind of went for something that seemed a little bit less intimidating and got into a band. And, it was a great way to continue my love for being on stage. And yeah, I've been in bands ever since. I have touched back into musical theatre over that time as well, and I still really love it. But I've been in bands since I was in my early 20s, both original and covers.
Yeah.
And have had a lot of hours on stage in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And around Australia. But there's nothing like the experience of being on stage for me. So I'm just always looking for different opportunities of how I can stretch my range and improve in different areas. And AC/DC was just one of those avenues.
I was gonna ask. This isn't a generic genre. To me, rock and metal and that's awesome. It's an awesome genre, but it's not super common for people to maybe go down a different route, maybe classical music or jazz or something. Why'd you pick rock and hard rock?
I don't know if I ever picked it. I guess my earliest experience of what I was gravitating towards within the musical theatre realm was always those big belter numbers, those really powerful, putting your soul on the line, letting everyone know how you feel kind of numbers. And so within straight band format, rock kind of was the avenue that I got to touch, get in touch with that through. Yeah, within bands, I always found the rock songs were where I could kind of access that and express what I really liked to express on stage, which is really powerful.
Is it vulnerable on stage? Do you find it to be that blatant form of self-expression? Do you find that to be very vulnerable?
Absolutely. But there's a power in that as well. If you can stand in that vulnerability and not be shaken by it, if you can, some of the hardest things on stage is not the really complicated stuff where you have to do a whole lot of things all at once and make it look seamless. It's where you have to just stand in place and not move and be in that moment and hold that space. And I love that feeling.
Is it presence? I was talking to one of my friends about this. Is one thing I've noticed is presence. When you're in a moment, that's truly when we find peace. And I think that's sort of what Buddhism is all about in terms of finding peace. Is just being there, not worrying about what's behind you and what's in front of you. Do you find that crossovers into music a lot? And what about outside of music? Because you mentioned that you like the presence that music provides you.
Yeah.
Outside of music, how do you find your presence? How do you ground yourself in a moment? Because I struggle with that.
I definitely find that being on stage is my most grounded.
Wow.
Yeah. I've got a lot of, someone who struggles with social anxiety a lot, and that can lead to feeling if I'm inhibited socially, it can lead to feeling like you might not be completely understood by the person that you're expressing whatever to, because you're overthinking and you're, all that kind of stuff. But then on stage, it's so simplified. You've got one job, and that's to emote whatever it is that the song is giving you that you want to then express to the crowd. It's really simple. And everything that I'm expressing in that moment, even though it might be someone else's words. If I'm doing a cover song, I'm filtering that through my own experience, and I'm putting that out there. So being on stage, being able to express so openly and honestly in that moment, and then seeing the response in the crowd, I can see in people's eyes, yeah, I can feel what you're doing. It's like I can experience a level of connection socially on stage, even though you're so separate, that I don't often get in my everyday life.
That's fascinating.
I know, isn't that crazy?
I know, like, for the cameras and stuff, I'm just going to talk as if they're not here.
Yeah.
For the cameras and stuff, my job is to obviously interview people, but like, when you spoke about vulnerability, that's really interesting to me, because I feel like I'm starting to get that now as I'm sort of growing up and becoming an adult. I'm realizing that there is really a power in vulnerability and being like super authentic to yourself. Because the people who end up sticking around, they truly love you for you. And
Yeah.
if you try to be someone else, they'll stick around for the person you want to be, maybe not who you are.
Yeah, and doing that is a way of like allowing other people around you to do it too. Like you can have a real power.
Absolutely.
You can have a really positive power on the people around you. If you
100%.
can step into that space, they can go, oh, that's okay, and they can open up too.
I feel like that's what's just happened. You've shared something so vulnerable, and I'm like, me too.
Yeah.
I do feel that as well. Yeah, like this is purely just for me. I'm just curious, how do you sort of deal with social anxiety over time? Because that's something I probably could work
Just when you think you've got a handle on it, sometimes it can sneak up on you. And I've been going through a little bit of a period recently where I've been in a slightly higher state of anxiety, like over a period of time, and just like seeing the way that affects how I approach different things that are coming up. You know, like I know when I get on stage for a gig, it's just going to be a completely different mindset. I can get away from it, but the lead up to it can sometimes be really daunting. And social anxiety for me personally, and other things that I deal with, it can really eat away at my confidence or just the way that I view myself, you know. And so performing for me is this lifeline, because it gives me a moment where I can get back in touch with what's really true for myself and like get rid of the noise. So yeah, it's
God, that's beautiful.
really powerful part of my life, like something that's integral to me being well, you know.
It keeps us sane.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
You mentioned that obviously just before stage, that's when sort of things are at most heightened in terms of that anxiety. I find the exact same thing. It used to drive me nuts in school, right before like an exam. I've studied more than everyone. I know I've put in the hours and the work, or before a big performance. And then as I get on stage, forgot to plug the bass in, didn't turn the volume up. Some stupid little thing that gets me so in my head. I forget to actually perform and be present and make sure everything's good and then perform. What's your process as right before you get on stage of like, okay, time to ground myself?
Yeah, so that I find pretty easy. Like when I actually have something to do that's working towards the goal that I'm moving towards, that's fine. Like I know when I get to a venue, I'm going to be warming up my voice. I'm going to be like getting myself like amped up.
Yeah.
You know, just calling upon whatever it is that I'm about to perform. Like trying to call upon the essence of that and really like embody that. But it's before that for me that I really struggle, when there's nothing to do, you know, like you're just waiting.
Music gives you that purpose, that like the direction to channel sort of, it's all energy at the end of the day, right? Whether it's social anxiety or comfort or performance, it's all energy. And would I be correct in sort of guessing that like having a performance that, you know, I'm going to perform at this time, does that sort of help channel everything and focus you? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, having a purpose, like, you know, I think humans really struggle without it, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? So,
absolutely.
yeah, however big or small that purpose is, like, I think it's always helpful.
Yeah. And when did you know that, would I be correct in saying performing is your purpose? That's how you feel?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. When did you know that? Was it a young age or you just something over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of my earliest memories of performing, I used to do gymnastics when I was younger.
Cool.
And so just putting on displays, like it's just a different way of performing, right? So you're in a social space where people have come to watch what you're doing, and then doing something physical and like presenting something to people, like taking them on this little like story journey in whatever way you're doing. That always just felt, there was something special about how that felt for me. So from a pretty young age, I knew I just loved being in that space. And I love how transformative it is. Like right now we're sitting on a stage in an empty room, right?
There's literally no one.
But this room has once been so potent with energy from the crowd being here and like what the band has created and the cyclical effect of that energy going back and forth between the band and the crowd, that like there's just been this, like you can feel it in the air kind of energy, right? So I love walking into a theatre space or a venue and just feeling that potential for change or potential for like, we're going to create something here, make something from a room that was empty and had nothing in it.
That's so cool. Again, it is creativity. You're creating energy and you're sort of manipulating that rhythm to get everyone on track. Who are your biggest inspirations, like when you first started that got you sort of towards music?
Well, my dad was a big inspiration. He used to play guitar for my sister and I when we were young. So there was a lot of like singing to Dad playing guitar. And
What did he used to play?
He had a little songbook of like 100 like guitar hits or something. My dad, he's the sweetest. Like he can play, but like he'd always, most of the songs he'd get to a point where he'd be like, I can't do that one, go to the next one, right? And so every song we play, I'll be like, all right, we're going to get to this point, we're going to do this one.
Yeah.
But my dad, a big inspiration for me, like motivator, and then like my biggest supporter as well. He's like wonderful. But in terms of performers, I love, Jeff Buckley was always a huge inspiration for me when I was younger.
That's why we prayed to him before.
Yes, it is. And pretty much any front person who can hold that space, like we touched on before, like being able to stand in a moment and hold the space. Anyone who can do that and be in that power, I love. Can we swear?
Absolutely.
Fucking love that. So your Freddie Mercury's, your Tina Turner,
perfect.
like anyone who can just like make that
Hold
space
the
their own.
Yeah.
You know?
We were talking earlier when we were just sort of chatting a bit before the show about how music and sports sort of brings people to come together. I'm pretty new to the whole music scene and I've always been a fan of music, but more of a sporting basketball, boxing background. Yeah. It's so cool that you mentioned gymnastics because obviously sports and music brings people together, but I never thought of the performance being so similar as well. You are trying to capture a moment, whether it's in sporting or music.
Yeah.
Now, with AC/DC, traditionally speaking, male-dominated group, your vocals from the videos that I've seen are unreal.
Thanks.
How do you find the ability to translate those vocals into yours, and then how do you find that voice for AC/DC? Because obviously, male voice, female voice is very different.
Yeah.
How do you sort of make it harmonize and work together so well? Is what I'm asking.
Well, I guess I'm just lucky I can pull it off to a degree that people like enjoy it. I learnt a lot of the skills that I have as a singer, I learnt through being a really good mimic. Like I can hear, I remember being really young watching Warner Brothers cartoons and like mimicking all of the different characters. But trying to just like get in on that tone.
Yeah.
And so being able to match tone, hear the way, if I hear someone speaking or singing, I can kind of feel where they're placing that vocally and just play around with that. So like Alanis Morissette taught me how to yodel and like that kind of stuff, like just from listening to things, I've been able to increase my technique and improve my technique and everything. So it just came down to listening to it and trying to find the place that you need to be within it.
Over your career of music and stuff, how has your taste in music evolved? Like, have you still listening to the same stuff you did as a kid, or? I look back a lot. Yeah.
I think I romanticize the past a lot, and I'm not completely up on what's current. There's like little bits that I'll cherry pick from what comes out now, but I really love diving into the past. So I'd say as I get older, I just like to try and broaden my understanding of like what has been more. And I love understanding the connection and the flow through time of where bands have influenced the bands that follow, and like you listen to someone and you go, oh, they fucking loved Zeppelin, or you can just hear it coming through. So I'd say my taste is so broad that hasn't changed at all. I'd say it's just more, the more time I've had, the more opportunity to explore more bands, you know.
Do you still find that you're motivated to discover more music, or is it more of a refining process now that trying to just perfect something, or both? Even?
Yeah. I think it often comes from little pockets being opened by things I already know, or people that I play with. Like I think a lot of other people's tastes. I think in my experience, the majority of the people that I've played with in my career have been a bit older than me, and I really like that. I like kind of being open to people who have had experience before me. And so I think a lot of what I get into is through the people that I know in music and what they might bring up that I'm like, oh, I haven't heard of them before. I'll have a look into that. And yeah.
Cool. I was having a chat with Kate earlier, and she mentioned that you have a fantastic stage presence. Does that come from the...
I believe she said that I'm hot.
That too. I love the confidence.
Please don't come at me about that. If you disagree, I don't want to hear about it.
No, who's going to disagree?
Me.
Nah, it's just you then. It's just you against yourself.
All right.
Because no one else would say that.
That's very kind.
Yeah, so about stage presence, does that come from the theatre?
I think so, yeah.
And was it sort of artists like Freddie Mercury that inspired your theatre presence? I mean, your stage presence?
It's really hard to say. Like, I know from the very first times that I was ever on stage, I always got feedback from people. And I mean, it was my parents mostly initially, and they're always going to say good things. But even early on, I think I just turned on stage. And so there was just something there that came forward, you know, without me looking to someone and going, I'm going to be like this. It was just the fact that I was in that space and I had eyes on me and I was presenting something. It's like the confidence of, I think for me, the confidence of having a story to tell or having something you're trying to express, and just the simplicity of that, being able to like let go into that. Like I think there was just something in me that really responded to that. And so I've always had the feedback from people that I've got a stage presence of some sort, and it's not something that I'm trying to do.
It just sort of happens.
Yeah, it's lucky.
Yeah.
I find it's very lucky.
One thing that I'm sort of hearing a little bit as we sort of go through this conversation is, it's almost like you have a different persona on stage. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to think that changes from one project to the other.
It would.
I'd like to think that I try and like honour. It's not about me being on stage and getting accolades for me and who I am. It's like doing justice to whatever it is we're trying to achieve together. Yeah.
Well, I've looked into that, where a lot of, whether it's athletes or musicians, I think Freddie Mercury, that wasn't his real name either, they have their stage version of themselves and then their at-home civilian version of themselves. What's the biggest difference for you that you notice between your stage self and maybe you off stage?
I'm a big, I edit myself in real life a lot, you know, like so I don't know if have you heard of, what is that term? When you're, I can't think of it.
Describe it, I'll see if I can.
So you have a childhood where things are a bit unpredictable, so you learn to be really hyper attuned to your surroundings, and if somebody moves into the space that you're like, or something's not right with them, you're very, very aware of that. It's like just
I-
hypersensitive to
yeah.
your surroundings, right?
Cool.
So I tend to, in my everyday life, be very accommodating to what's going on around me to try and keep things like cool. Whereas on stage, I'll do whatever the fuck I want to try and like
To fulfill that.
to fulfill, whatever I need to fulfill in that moment. I'm not worrying about, oh, is that person going to be offended by what I just did? I'm going to be like, then they should be offended because I'm doing it. You know,
That's
like.
so cool.
So that's why, for me, it's such a freeing, important part in my life because I can let go of that like clamp in my head that's like present a lot.
Maybe I got to start singing. Maybe that's what I got to do. Start singing and drinking. That seems to be the.
I'm not going to be responsible for you going down that path.
It's going to be you.
Cheers.
Cheers. There we go. That's pretty funny.
Hypervigilant, that's the word.
That's the one. Cool.
Hypervigilant, yeah.
I'm going to look into
I'm
that.
not
That's really
hypervigilant on stage. That's the biggest difference.
So, and then going back to that vulnerability, when you're hypervigilant, it seems like you can't really give yourself the chance to be vulnerable because you're worried about your environment.
Well,
is that what it is?
Yeah, but that really comes down to like who you're around. There's definitely scenarios where I'm with people that I'm relaxed with and I can be vulnerable, and that's really important, like for those relationships. But I won't be if I don't feel safe about it and secure.
100%.
If I'm playing AC/DC, there's definitely a go fuck yourself element to it.
And I think that's how you make them proud. That's what they stood for, was like fun and just being as free as possible.
Yeah.
So that totally makes sense.
I'm saying to the crowd, go fuck yourself, and they're saying it right back to me. It's great.
Yeah. And then you sort of like swearing at each other, and there's this, it's like a synergy to that.
Absolutely.
That's
There's an understanding.
100%. And then just sort of navigating those such heightened emotions on stage and off stage is so cool to hear you sort of talk about. If you could go back in time, talk to your younger self, what sort of advice would you give, if you would? It's a bit of a
So
curveball.
hard, man. It's
your
so
time.
hard.
Take your time.
You're not going to grow boobs, but it's okay. It's okay.
Kate thinks you're hot.
No, that's fine. Like, what would I say? I'd say you like go with your gut. Go with your gut, and the people who understand it will stick around. You know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I basically need to keep telling myself that now. Like, I need my older self to tell me that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's. So I'm just sort of processing that, because the reason I ask that question, and I like asking that to many people, is because I assume I'm their younger self sometimes. So for me, it's like good for me to learn as well.
Yeah.
And no, this has been really insightful. So Cynthia, thank you for your time.
Thank
That was
you.
fantastic.